This morning we finished our series on Hebrews called Fix Our Eyes on Jesus, and we're looking at Hebrews chapter 12. Jesus, our King. It's on page 10 in the service folder. I want you to think about this first. Several years ago, a video went viral that featured a little boy, a 9-year-old boy who was in line to meet the Queen of England, Her Majesty, the late Queen Elizabeth II. He and his parents were waiting in line, and he was very excited, and here's what happened. See ya. Yeah, you saw the video. You saw what happened, didn't you? The boy was apparently excited to meet the Queen. He really was. As soon as she came into the room, his parents said he froze up, as you saw in the video too. He became very nervous. Look at his face. Wow, it's real. She's here. She's standing right in front of me. He froze. He fell. He crawled out of that room yelling, "See ya!" over his shoulder. Oh, if you were a parent. If you're a parent in that room or watching that video, you're probably like, finally, it's not my kid. If you're a parent, you're thinking, my kid can embarrass me in public, but my kid has at least never fell to the ground and crawled out in front of the Queen of England, right? So parents, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I bring up that it's because it's a funny video, but I also bring it up because I think it's a really good illustration about how sometimes we can feel standing before a holy, just, righteous, and awesome God. Maybe you've heard the call before. Come to church. Come to worship. Come to God. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, really? Maybe God doesn't want to see me. Maybe God doesn't accept me. Or maybe God, unlike other people who can see the mask that I'm wearing, that he sees behind the mask and he sees who I really am. And in moments like that, in moments thinking about standing before the holy, righteous, awesome God who has no sin, we might fall to our knees and crawl out of that room saying, "See ya. I don't want to be here." We could feel like the sins that we have, the addictions or the secret sins or the failures in our life, the promises that we've made and yet broken, the anticipation of having goals and yet breaking them or breaking our word to other people or even breaking our word to God, that when we stand before that God, many people when they enter faith or they're new to the faith, they think that faith is all about reformation. They think that faith is all about cleaning themselves up. Or that faith is, I got to get myself right before God before I can come to him. So I'm going to work on the addiction. I'm going to work on the secret sin. I'm going to work on the habits that I know that are not pleasing to God. I'm going to work on these things and try to work my way into a relationship with God so at least I can ring the doorbell. And believers who start that way in faith, they might have a lot of excitement at first. They might have a lot of joy in trying to reform themselves, but here's what happens is you trip, you fall, you sin. And that cycle can happen again and again and again. And when you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm trying to reform myself, I'm trying to be more moral, I'm trying to clean myself up for God, and yet I know I can project a good life, but I know that in my thoughts, words, and actions, in my mind that I do sin, your joy in your walk with Jesus becomes empty. And you might begin to doubt the very faith that you have because it's based on your performance and not based on something firm. It's based on something shaky that depends on you. It's not based on something certain. And so you begin to feel like you're standing at the base of a scary mountain. And this morning, we're asking this question, and we're thinking about this. In fact, when your faith is based on your performance, you will always be feeling like when you're trying to climb, you're always falling behind. And that's the first key point. That every step upward, when your faith is performance-based, reveals how far behind you really are. Think about that. In Hebrews chapter 12, the writer puts before us two mountains. Two places where you can find a relationship with God. But only one of those mountains can save. And my question to you as we go through this text is, which mountain are you standing on? Which mountain are you walking? This is how Hebrews chapter 12, starting at verse 18, goes. You have not come to a mountain that can be touched and that is burning with fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to a trumpet blast, or to such a voice speaking words that those who heard it begged that no further word should be spoken to them, because they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned to death. The sight of it was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. What is this talking about? This is talking about Mount Sinai, and this is the history about Mount Sinai. God, through his mighty power, has delivered his people from Egypt. They were in slavery, taken them through the Red Sea, and then defeated the enemies of the Hebrew people, brought them into safety, and brought them into an encampment in the wilderness. And in the wilderness, before them was Mount Sinai. Now, Mount Sinai itself, not a particularly intimidating mountain, naturally. But here's what happened. God said, I'm going to show my people my glory. I'm going to show them my power. I'm going to show them my righteousness. I'm going to show them my glory. And I'm going to do it by allowing my presence to descend on top of the mountain. This is all in Exodus chapter 19. And he calls Moses and he says, tell the people that when they see the cloud that covers the mountain, when they see the thunder, when they hear see the lightning, hear the thunder, when they see the power that I have, tell them not to come close. Because if they come close, if they even approach, or if they even touch that mountain, they will die. Even an animal, and an animal is just a beast. It doesn't understand the rules of God, doesn't understand human language. Even if a beast accidentally walks out and approaches the mountain and touches it, it'll be put to death. How much more responsible would be somebody that actually knows about not approaching this mountain be if they would go towards this mountain and try to climb it? They will surely die. And here's what this mountain represents. It represents God's holiness, his righteousness. When he allowed Moses to come up the mountain by his permission, Moses went up, spoke with God, and came back with what? Do you remember what he came back with? Yeah, he came back with the tablets. He came back with the 10 commandments, and the 10 commandments really represent what this mountain is all about. Do this. Don't do that. This is the old covenant with God's people. If you do this and you don't do that, if you are holy and you don't sin, then you can have a relationship with God. This is what Mount Sinai is all about. But if you break the law, you can't have a relationship with God. You can't approach God. God is holy and you are not. But if you are holy and you can keep the law perfectly, then you can approach God. But nobody can approach God. Otherwise you die. It was a conundrum. It was a lesson, wasn't it? None of us can approach God. That's the message of Mount Sinai. And so that's his message for us today in the book of Hebrews. He's doing a commentary. If you like reading commentaries, this is like a commentary about the Old Testament. He's saying, friends, and this audience was a Jewish believer audience, if you're trying to approach God like you approached him in the Old Testament, if you're trying to come to him and try to keep the rules, keep the laws, you know that every step that you take upward, you discover what? How far behind you really are. So don't fall into that trap. I'm not saying don't try hard to live for Jesus, but this is teaching us that your way to God, your relationship with God, the Mount Sinai was like a mirror. A mirror is helpful. A mirror is useful. A mirror tells us what we look like when we wake up in the morning. I'm I hope everybody in this room used a mirror. Maybe not. Maybe I use a mirror in the morning because my hair is sticking up this way and that way. I have eye boogers coming out. And I think to myself, what needs to be fixed before I come out of this house, right? But the mirror doesn't do the fixing. It can't do the fixing. I don't rip the mirror off the wall and start combing my hair and cleaning out my face, and that's not the purpose of the mirror. The mirror is there to show you what needs to be fixed. My friends, the law, 10 Commandments, Mount Sinai was there to show us that something needed to be fixed, but Mount Sinai doesn't fix. It's holy, it's good, it's righteous. The 10 Commandments are right, and we need to keep them. But every step that you take up that mountain, you're going to find that you fall farther and farther behind. So here's the big turn. Some of the greatest news in all of the Bible is in verse 22. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyful assembly, to the church of the firstborn, whose names are written in heaven. You have come to God, the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Mount Zion is the mount on which Jerusalem was established. And now this is a different mount than Mount Sinai, and he's getting our vision. He's taking us to a new place, and he's saying, you have come to Mount Zion. For the Jewish believer, the Mount Zion would recall things like the security of God, Mount Zion or Jerusalem, the city of David. These phrases in the Bible, in the New Testament especially, recall safety, security, presence of God, people living with God in safety and peace and righteousness and joy. You have been placed in Mount Sinai, Zion, he said. You have been placed there. It's not, you could be placed there, you might be placed there. Have you been good enough where you deserve to be placed there? No. You have come to Mount Zion. The point is this: you have been placed into a new covenant. A new covenant. Not like the old covenant like Mount Sinai. You have come to a new covenant that's based on a different truth. It's based on a promise. How do you come into a relationship with God? How do you have that peace? It doesn't come from you trying to climb Mount Sinai. It comes from Jesus. The author says, the mediator of your faith. And you come to him through what he says, Jesus' blood, which is a blood that is better than Abel's. Abel was a martyr that was the first one to be killed for his faith. He made a sacrifice, and his brother Cain became jealous, and he murdered Abel. And so Abel's blood, you could say, what translation is innocent. It's innocent blood. It's innocent blood that was spilled. But Jesus' blood, the author says, is even more innocent, because here's how you come to God. You don't come to God by climbing the mountain or trying to keep all of the rules. You come to God because Jesus came down to earth and lived the life that you and I couldn't live. When he was on this earth, he loved people unconditionally, he forgave people, he spoke the truth, he healed the sick, and he never broke any of those commandments that God gave on Mount Sinai. And so metaphorically speaking, you could say that if any person should approach Mount Sinai and not die, who was it? Jesus. He would be the only one qualified to touch Mount Sinai and not die. But here's what happened. Although he lived a perfect life, and although he never sinned, and although he had the perfect report card to touch and walk up Mount Sinai, metaphorically speaking, he walked to Mount Sinai, the darkness, the thunder, the lightning, the judgment of God. He walked up that mountain, and although he was innocent, what did God do to him? He punished him with his wrath. He went to the cross, the Mount Sinai of God's wrath, and darkness covered the whole land. He was keeping the law for you. When he gave up his life, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Because he was on Mount Sinai, the innocent lamb whose blood was spilt for you. He did it because he loves you. He does it because he sees you and me trying to climb Mount Sinai, trying to work our way to heaven again and again, and pridefully thinking in our hearts that we can do it. He forgives your pride. He forgives your secret sins. He forgives your arrogance. He forgives your shame. He covers it all over on his cross, and you have come to Mount Zion. And that changes everything. Verse 25, "See to it that you do not refuse him who speaks. If they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, how much less will we if we turn away from him who warns us from heaven?" At that time, his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, "Once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens." The word "once more" indicate the removing of what can be shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. All right, so the author is speaking in cursive here, and there's a lot of imagery and kind of some confusing things happening, but this is what it boils down to. What the author is saying is that everything on earth, everything that we put our hope in, everything created and human, it's going to be shaken. Anything that you build your life on can be shaken. What are some things that I build my life on? Well, I build my life on my image. I build my life on my performance. I build my life on my career or my bank account. I build my life on, well, you fill in the blank. I build my life on my family. I build my life on my health. I build my life on my relationships. All these things, even the good things, they can be shaken. They can be taken away. And if you're walking and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to base my life on the ground of this world, this is saying that God's going to shake everything. Everything can be shaken. Family members can be taken away from you. Health can be taken away from you. Your money can be taken away from you. And what happens when anything like that happens in your life? You're going to be shaken to the core, and you're going to think to yourself, God must not love me. Or you might think to yourself, this world doesn't matter. You're going to despair. So friends, stand on Mount Zion, because Mount Zion cannot be shaken. Your foundation is different. The writer to the Hebrews is saying that everything in this world can be shaken, even the things that are blessings in your life, but don't make the blessings the ultimate thing. Make Mount Zion the big thing in your life. Make Jesus, his forgiveness, the big thing. And then, when your relationships get shaken, or your finances get shaken, or your career gets shaken, or anything human gets shaken, you're not going to have a foundation that's shaking. You're going to have the firm foundation of grace, forgiveness, righteousness, holiness. That's why in Revelation, in our reading from Revelation earlier, everybody's dressed in white robes. It's not because they earned those robes. It's not because they were trying to. No, those robes were given to them by Jesus as a new identity. So root yourself in that new identity. And he closes this way, verse 28. "Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire." Key point, you are not climbing Sinai anymore, you stand on Zion. And two things that he tells us is how this is going to change your life is how you worship and how you give thanks. That's why he says, let us be thankful and let us worship. You're thankful. You live a thankful life, not because you're thankful because you're hoping to get more blessings from God. You're thankful because you've been blessed by God. You're thankful not because you hope to get more things from God. You're thankful because he's given you everything in Jesus, plus the blessings that he gives you in your life. Not thinking about what you don't have, but you're thinking about what he's already given you. That's the foundation. That can't be taken away. Be thankful, and he says worship. Don't come to worship thinking to yourself, I'm showing up to church, I'm being regular in church, I'm being a good church person in order that other people see that I'm a righteous person or that God can see I'm a righteous person. Come to worship to be forgiven. Come to worship to say to God, I'm coming to worship because I already have been blessed. I've already been saved. Come to worship with your full self saying, I know that I have the flaws. I know that I'm fighting against sin. And I know that I'm doing everything in my power to follow you, Jesus, but in those times that I have failed again and again, in those secret sins, in the shame, in the big mess-ups in life, in the little mess-ups in life, in the sin that I come, Jesus, you see me, and I'm wearing a white robe, not because I've earned it, but because you've given it to me. Worship with your whole heart saying, praise God. My foundation isn't shaky. My foundation is secure. Friends, if you're trying to climb Mount Sinai today, stop. Just stop. Use the law. Use the law in the places in your life to say, this is God's will for me. This is how I should live. This is how I want to live. But when you fail, remember, you have come to Mount Zion. You have come to the city of the living God by grace. All through Jesus. In closing the series, the book of Hebrews says Jesus is everything. Jesus is your mediator, the one that goes between you and God. Jesus is your king. Jesus is your high priest, and Jesus is your sacrifice. So fix your eyes on him. Amen.